You are standing on a wall that is held for 5 years. 5 years of Mongol armies surrounding the fortress city of Xiangyang. 5 years of blockades on the Han River. 5 years of starvation attempts, naval battles, and direct assaults on these same stones beneath your feet. None of it worked. The greatest military machine on earth threw everything it had at this city in central China. Mongol cavalry encampments stretched across the river plain as far as the eye could see. Siege towers rolled toward the gates. Flaming projectiles sailed over the battlements. A fleet of 5,000 UN warships choked the waterway, and the walls of Xiangyang held. You have watched traction trebuchets launch stones at these walls for years. Teams of soldiers pulling ropes in unison, hurling rocks in high arcs toward the fortifications. You know their range, you know their rhythm, you know exactly where to stand when the stones fall short. But the stone now arcing through the sky above the Han River is different. It is heavier than anything you have ever seen launched from a siege engine. It flies farther than any Chinese trebuchet can reach, and when it strikes the outer wall of Xiangyang, the impact shakes the earth beneath your feet. Dust and rubble cascade down the ancient stonework. Something has changed. The Mongols have a new weapon, and the walls that survived 5 years of siege have weeks left. If you enjoy deep dives into the military innovations that shaped empires, subscribe. New videos every week. To understand why the Mongol Empire spent 5 years on a single city, you need to understand what Xiangyang actually was. Xiangyang and its twin city Fancheng sat on opposite banks of the Han River in what is now Hubei province in central China. Mountains surrounded Xiangyang on 3 sides, and the wide waters of the Han covered the 4th. The walls were 6 to 7 meters thick, roughly 20 feet of solid stone and packed earth. The main entrances led out to waterways that became impassable swamps in winter and uncrossable currents in summer. A pontoon bridge connected the 2 cities across the river, allowing defenders to reinforce either side within minutes. And the Song dynasty had spent decades stockpiling food, weapons, and supplies inside the fortress, preparing for exactly the kind of prolonged siege the Mongols were about to attempt. But the real significance of Xiangyang was not its defenses, it was its position on the map. The Han River flows directly into the Yangtze, the massive waterway that cuts China in half from west to east. Whoever controlled Xiangyang controlled access to the Yangtze, and whoever controlled the Yangtze controlled southern China. Kublai Khan understood this. Without Xiangyang, his armies could not reach the wealthy cities of the south. They could not take the Song capital at Hangzhou. They could not finish what his grandfather Genghis Khan started. The southern Song dynasty had held off Mongol invasions for over 30 years by defending this exact position on the Han River. Xiangyang was not just a fortress, it was the lock on the door to the most advanced civilization on earth. In 1267, Kublai Khan ordered his commanders Aju and the Song defector Liu Zheng to take the city. They arrived in 1268 and surrounded Xiangyang with a ring of forts, cutting the land routes one by one. Then the Mongols built a fleet. 5,000 warships filled the Han River, blocking any Song supply boats from reaching the city. They constructed 5 stone platforms across the waterway, each topped with massive crossbows called arbalests that could sink approaching vessels before they got close. They trained 70,000 Marines to patrol the waters. On land, Mongol cavalry crushed every Song relief force that tried to reach the fortress from the south. Numbers tell the story of those years. In October of 1270, a Song relief force lost 1,000 men trying to break through the Mongol lines. In August of 1271, another attempt cost 2,000 soldiers. The following month, most of a 3,000-strong force was destroyed. By 1271, 4 years into the siege, supplies inside Xiangyang were finally running low. The years of stockpiles were dwindling. The Mongol ring of forts and warships had choked nearly every route into the city. And then came the moment that defines the siege of Xiangyang, the moment of pure human courage against impossible odds. In September of 1272, two Song commanders, both named Zhang, assembled a force of 3,000 men and 100 paddle-wheel warships. These were not ordinary boats. Song paddle-wheelers were powered by soldiers working treadmills inside the hull, driving large wooden wheels on each side. They were fast, maneuverable, and built for exactly this kind of desperate river assault. The fleet launched at night, under the light of lantern fire, pushing upriver through the Mongol blockade toward Xiangyang. The UN commanders spotted them early. The Mongol fleet spread across the entire surface of the Han River, vessels packed so tightly there was no gap to slip through. Iron chains stretched across the water to snag any ship that tried to ram past. The two fleets collided in the darkness. Song sailors fired crossbows, fire lances, and gunpowder bombs into the Mongol line. The paddle wheelers drove forward through the chaos, and somehow the supplies got through to the starving defenders of Xiangyang. But Zhang Xun, one of the two commanders, was killed in the fighting. His death was considered a devastating loss. The other commander and the surviving troops were now trapped inside the city. When they later attempted to break back out, the Mongols lit straw along the riverbanks to illuminate the water at night, turning the escape route into a killing field. Most of the remaining soldiers were captured or killed. The Song imperial court, seeing the catastrophic casualty rates, stopped sending reinforcements. Xiangyang was on its own. Still, Commander Lu Wenhuan refused to surrender, and the Mongols still could not storm the walls without suffering unacceptable casualties. The siege ground on. This is where Kublai Khan made the decision that changed the course of Chinese history. He had heard reports from Mongol campaigns in the Middle East where siege engines of extraordinary power had been used against fortified cities, engines unlike anything that existed in China. So, in 1272, Kublai Khan sent word to Abaka, the Ilkhan of Persia, requesting engineers who understood this technology. Two men answered the call: Ismail and Ala al-Din, Muslim engineers from the Persian territories of the Mongol Empire, traveled thousands of miles east to China. They brought with them the knowledge to build counterweight trebuchets, a weapon the Chinese had never encountered. Here is why that mattered. Every trebuchet in China at the time was a traction trebuchet. It worked by having teams of soldiers, sometimes dozens of men, pull ropes attached to one end of a long beam. The other end held the projectile. When the team pulled in unison, the beam swung and launched the stone. It was effective, but limited. The range depended on how many men you could fit on the ropes. The projectile weight was capped by human pulling strength. Accuracy dropped sharply at longer distances. The counterweight trebuchet worked on a completely different principle. Instead of human muscle, it used gravity, a massive weight, often a box filled with tons of earth or stone, hung from the short end of the beam. When released, the counterweight dropped, swinging the long arm upward and launching the projectile with exponentially more force than any rope team could generate. The result was a siege engine that could throw stones of extraordinary weight across distances that Chinese defenders had never had to prepare for. Their walls were built to withstand traction trebuchets. They were not built for this. By early 1273, Ismail and Ala al-Din had constructed the weapons under the supervision of the Uyghur general Arikgia. The Mongols called them Hui Pao, Muslim trebuchets. The Mongols aimed the Hui Pao at Fancheng first, the smaller of the twin cities across the river from Xiangyang. When the first stone struck, chroniclers recorded that the impact shook heaven and earth. The sound of stone smashing into stone could be heard across both cities. Soldiers ran to inspect the damage and found the projectile had sunk several feet into solid ground. The bombardment collapsed towers, shattered walls, and destroyed structures that had withstood 5 years of conventional siege weaponry. Fancheng could not hold against such a barrage. The city fell within days. Then the Mongols sent a message that still echoes through Chinese history. They executed the entire population of Fancheng, every man, woman, and child. One account describes a wall built along the river's edge from 10,000 corpses, positioned so the defenders of Xiangyang could see it from across the Han River. Commander Lu Wenhuan had held Xiangyang for 5 years. He had survived blockades, starvation, and the deaths of brave men who gave their lives to resupply his city. But when he saw the rubble of Fancheng and the bodies along the riverbank, he knew what the Hui Pao would do to Xiangyang next. On March 14, 1273, Lu Wenhuan surrendered. He was appointed governor of both cities under Yuan rule as part of the terms. The strongest fortress of the Song dynasty had fallen. After 5 years of defiance, the door to southern China was open. The Mongols sailed their fleet down the Han River into the Yangtze. The fortresses along the way surrendered one after another, many of them commanded by officers who had served under Lu Wenhuan. He personally persuaded his former colleagues to switch sides. By 1276, the Song capital of Hangzhou had fallen. By 1279, the last remnants of the Song dynasty were destroyed at the naval battle of Yamen. The most technologically advanced civilization on Earth, the dynasty that invented gunpowder weapons and movable type printing, was conquered in 6 years. It all started with 2 engineers from Persia and a wooden machine that used gravity instead of muscle. The counterweight trebuchet spread across East Asia after Xiangyang. Chinese engineers studied the captured machines and began building their own. Within a generation, traction trebuchets were obsolete across the continent. Xiangyang is the pivot point of Chinese history. The battle that ended a dynasty, the siege that completed the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen. It is a reminder that sometimes the most important weapon in a war is not carried by soldiers. It is built by engineers from the other side of the world. Subscribe for more untold stories from the Mongol Wars.